In this episode, I teach my first ever miniature painting class. What up, Mini family? I've attended a fair amount of miniature painting classes, both held at conventions like Adepticon and also held locally here where I live. Heck, I've even hosted several out-of-town miniature painters to come in and teach classes to everyone here in Minnesota. But I've never actually taught a class myself, so let's give that a shot. Why not compound the stress of teaching my first ever class with an alien country? What could go wrong? Over the course of the next few weeks, we worked out an agenda for the classes. And what we settled on was that I was going to teach two classes, a beginner one and an advanced one. And in the beginner one, I would teach things like basic tools and materials for miniature painting, and also basic techniques like base coating, washing, and layering. And for the more advanced one, I'd teach things like wet blending and highlight and shadow placement and expanding your color palette for what colors to use for shadows and highlights, etc. Each class would be 4 hours long and have 15 students max in them. The store that we hosted the classes at was called Critical Hit Gaming Lounge in Curtis, Ontario. It was a pretty cool gaming store, chock full of awesome gaming tables, free-to-play board games, minis and supplies to buy, and an interesting selection of cuisine. They had a separate room for me to teach the class in, which is good. I have learned from hosting classes in the past that having a painting course in the same room as where games are happening is often a pretty bad experience. It can tend to be too loud and distracting. I arrived on Friday and the class was on Saturday, and the day came pretty quickly. On Saturday morning, we set up the room for the beginner class, which was first. All the painters arrived, and then it was time for the class. The class went perfectly, which is a major stress off my shoulders. The students were engaged and asking questions, and most importantly, I think they were having fun. It doesn't look wet. I went into the class being nervous, which I think is pretty natural for doing something for the first time, especially something like this that involves performance to some degree. And I left feeling more confident in my abilities to teach a live crowd without the benefit of having some kind of editing suite to cut out all the bits where I'm being stupid. In both classes, we used minis from a company called Dark Sword Miniatures, which is a company that's run out of the state that I live in, Minnesota. Dark Sword has incredibly inexpensive and cool minis that range all sorts of different fantasy races. They have plenty of minis for various D&D classes and race combinations if you're looking for a miniature for a campaign you're currently in or one you're looking to start. They also have a fairly extensive line of anthropomorphic characters. Dark Sword also holds the license to the book series A Song of Ice and Fire, written by George R.R. Martin, which the hit show Game of Thrones is based on. The owner, Jim, is a super nice guy, and he actually personally delivered the miniatures for the class to me. I really enjoyed working with him, and I look forward to working with him in the future, if possible. If you want to check out Dark Sword Miniatures, you can find a link to all their awesome minis in the description below. I picked the Wild Elf for the beginner class because I liked the fur cloak texture. I felt like we could really demonstrate washing really well with that texture. I also liked that she was mostly leather and cloth and furs and not too much metallics, because we could really learn how to layer without needing to deal with metallic paint, which can oftentimes be a little bit finicky. After the beginner class was over, we took a little bit of a lunch break, and then it was time for the advanced class. I picked this miniature for the advanced class because I loved the volumes on his stomach and chest region. I felt like this would be a really good opportunity to demonstrate highlight and shadow placement. So the class started. We talked about the highlight and shadow placement portion. We demonstrated wet blending, and then it kind of started to fall apart. I didn't realize it then, but what I was trying to do was demonstrate a process that is not well defined and also takes much longer than 4 hours. I was trying to take wet blending as a foundation and get to an end result that looks really beautiful. And for me, a process like that can take multiple hours. And the steps to get to that really beautiful end product are not easily demonstratable, as previously mentioned. It's me smearing paint, adding things here and there when stuff doesn't look good. So the class started to fall apart then. And when I realized that I was sinking too much time into the stomach area and the cloth area, I asked the students, okay, what do you want to move on to next? And they said that they wanted to paint faces. So we started to do that. And then another issue came. The miniature that I had picked for this class has a beard that covers approximately 1/3 of his face, meaning that I couldn't teach the full landscape of how to paint a face because a lot of it was kind of hidden by a beard. This issue is easily solved by better planning. I should know how to fill the entire time allotment with demonstrable skills on the miniature that I picked. In the end, the kind Canadians said that the class was good, but I felt that I left them mildly confused and also like I couldn't walk the walk. So I figured, what's the point in failure if you don't try to sit down and solve your problems? And this is when I thought of people in bands. I know that's kind of a weird transition, but stick with me. Musicians on tour essentially play the same set list every single night with a little bit of variation. They get very good at playing specific songs, the theatrics involved, and also the time required to finish them in. And I felt this translated to miniature painters perfectly. If I had a single miniature that I took with me to every single class that I taught, I could understand the ins and the outs of it and how long it would take to paint each part and also the total miniature. And this would solve my time management and planning issue that I had in my advanced class. Also, what if I produced the digital version of the class that each student who took my physical class got access to? So in case I didn't finish the whole miniature in the class, which often happens in miniature painting classes, you could later refer to the digital version to see a particular part that I didn't get to. A lot of mini painters don't do this now because they don't have the infrastructure to do this, but I do, because I make YouTube videos, so why wouldn't I do that? I could even make the digital version of the class available to people that weren't able to attend the class as a less expensive standalone option. I could even produce the miniature that I would be using for the class so that I could sell bundles of the digital class and the mini, or the mini and the physical class. And this sounds like a pretty dang good idea. Until one of my patrons kindly reminded me that there is a miniature painter who is already doing this exact thing. Alfonso Giraldez takes his anonymous bust to every single class that he teaches and paints only that bust. So I was feeling a little less special. Well, that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but I'd love to find someone to design a miniature for a class that I would take on tour, essentially. Something that I would love to paint, like a Victorian era female vampire or some undead white knight or something kind of grisly like that. I was so eager to do this that I actually jumped on ArtStation and found a few people and was starting to send out messages for various offers. A big thanks to Critical Hit Gaming Lounge for believing in a kid who has literally no experience teaching classes, and also big thanks to Dark Sword Miniatures for sponsoring the class with the minis. If you want to find out any more information about these two companies, you can find them linked in the description below. Dom actually gave me a shirt to wear for this video, and I said I would wear it, and he gave me a large, but it turns out that he actually gave me a children's large. Way to go, Dom. I'm glad I was able to attempt teaching a class and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. I want to thank all the students that took the class and spent money on it despite my inexperience. So thank you. Hopefully I can take all those lessons that I learned and apply them to a new class format that hopefully results in a better educative experience. Well, guys, if you like the channel and you want to support it, you can find links in the description to my Patreon campaign, which has a bunch of fun rewards. Among those rewards are a Discord server where you can hang out with me and chat any day of the week. You can find also down there a link to a merchandise store where I sell t-shirts with my logo on it. You can also find links to my Amazon affiliate link that you can use while shopping on Amazon. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to play more minis!